All right. Full disclosure. I never played professional football a snap in my life. But I did play a lot of football. A lot. Played when I was a kid, played in high school, played some in college, played some semi-pro ball. And I understood that the most important thing on any team, it didn't matter what kind of skilled players you had. It really didn't matter. If your offensive line wasn't up to par, then you just weren't good. You know what I mean? Like your team struggled. Sure, your quarterback can pull you out of some games. Sure, a wide receiver may make a great catch every now and then. Sure, you may pop off a big run every now and then. But consistency is the key. And consistency comes from good offensive line play, good defensive line play, like we talked about in the last show. It's just where it comes from. And there's a lot of questions with this offensive line, especially since Zach Martin retired. And we'll talk about it right here next on Cowboy Spit.
Here we go! Yeah, here we go! Wait, take Cowboy Spit.
Throws back of the end zone. There's
What's up, everybody? Cowboy C3. Hey, make sure you guys like and subscribe, man. Share me. Get me out there, man. Let's turn this thing into what it's supposed to be. Offensive line play is like the most important thing on a football team. And you want to change the line of scrimmage every time you get an opportunity. You don't want to be driven backwards. You want to go forwards. That's what you want to do. And that's the name of the game. Defensive line is supposed to counter your offensive line and get in the backfield, make tackles, disrupt the quarterback, make him uncomfortable, all those types of things. And the Cowboys last year were mediocre at best on the offensive line, and they were mediocre at best on the defensive line. The most important thing for this team, I think, in 2025 is to win the Battle of the Trenches. And they can do that, right? They can do that. It's going to take some ingenuity. It's going to take some ingenuity in the front office. It's going to take some ingenuity in the front, by the coaching staff. And a lot of people that weren't very excited about this coaching staff, especially with the hiring of Brian Schottenheimer, have become a little bit more acceptive of it, strictly because of the coaches that he's hired. I'm a big fan of Clayton Adams. I'm a really big fan of Connor Riley. I think Connor Riley is an excellent addition as an offensive line coach because Kansas State, all these guys took, regular guys and made them into, something that was pretty serviceable, especially at Kansas State. Their offensive line was always really good, and they always had good running backs. I mean, Deuce Vaughn was on there. He was phenomenal for 3 straight seasons. Steven came out this week and said that the Cowboys were going to be selective, aggressive in their approach to this season, particularly in free agency. What does selective aggressive mean? Well, he talks about that. He talks about, Micah Parsons' contract, and he also talks, well, I'll just let you listen to him.
Do you want to get Micah done sooner rather than later? You got CD done in August, you got Dak done right before the season started. Is there an effort to get that done earlier than you've gotten these other ones done?
Yeah, I mean, there's always extenuating circumstances, to these things. And, every contract negotiation's different. I mean, CD, there were still other receivers that were trying to get their deal done, and some of them still hadn't gotten those deals done, as we all know. Dak's deal was, we were working on that, and Dak was in and didn't really affect anything in terms of, what we were doing. He was practicing every day and working hard, and as you know, he's not distracted by things like that. So, the CD deal was just different, and we'll just see how Micah's deal goes. I don't necessarily know that there's a lot of, extenuating situations out there that would precede us from being able to get our hands around something with Micah, but we'll see.
When he says he'd like to see you guys be aggressive, do you and Jerry hear that, like in how you attack free agency and looking to add players?
No, I mean, we're going to be selectively aggressive out here. I mean, we want to, obviously our goals historically have been, to try to fill as many of your must and needs before the draft so you can pick best player on your board. Didn't get that totally accomplished last year, but certainly that's always the goal, and every year's different in terms of what those must and needs are. And then you also, have to marry up what's in free agency versus where the draft is heavy, where we can help ourselves in the draft.
Willingness to want to keep him.
Yeah, we're certainly working with him right now, working with his agent, and have had productive talks, and we'll see where we end up this week.
Is franchise tag a possibility?
Yeah, I'm not going to get into the details. Obviously, franchise and transition tags, those are all tools that are used. But, getting into that right now, we're focusing right now on Osan, trying to get a deal done.
So, I don't particularly agree with everything that he said. Matter of fact, I think a lot of it is just BS. But selective aggressive in their approach. First of all, the Cowboys haven't been very aggressive in their approach in free agency any year, right? They've always gone after players that may have been good in the past. Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, even though Stephon Gilmore played an excellent corner for him, especially when Trayvon Diggs went down. He played a stand-up corner for him. Brandon Cooks he never really fruitioned into what everybody thought that he could be here. And he just wasn't that type of like a solid number 2 receiver. Brandon Cooks is more of a slot receiver. He can get in the slot and get things done, and we just didn't have a number 2 receiver, so Brandon Cooks kind of rolled into that role, if you will, and he became the number 2 receiver of the team, and it didn't really pan out the way that everybody thought it would. Well, at least I didn't think it would pan out, but then he said going into the draft, we'll start to attack positions, that are strong in the draft. And last year's free agency and last year's draft was super strong at the running back position, and we all knew that the Cowboys were short at that position. They had a deficiency at that position, and they chose to go with Zeke. And I hope when he says selective aggressive that they're going to key in on some players that they really feel like can fill some voids before the draft. Go after those players. Make sure you have some salary cap room to do that. We talked about 2 episodes ago that, you can open up a plethora of salary cap space, even with signing Micah Parsons. And now that Zach Martin has retired, that's $19 million that's just freed up money. You have an opportunity to really do some things in this free agency period that's coming up here very, very soon. And you got a draft coming up soon as well, and you're gonna have to tackle this. And one of the main things that you're gonna have to get done is you're gonna have to get Micah Parsons' deal done, and you're gonna have to try to re-sign Oseo Odigizua. That's important, especially to the defense. And the defense was less than stellar last year, to say the least. I'm hoping that there is really a change in regime. Earlier in that interview, they were talking about how Brian Schottenheimer, they kind of allow him to sit. They kind of just sat back. Him, Jerry and Will McClay kind of sat back and let Schottenheimer do the interviews with the coaches. He said, of course, we sat in on them, but he kind of hired the staff that he wanted. But, the guys that we had in place, the guys that, that they really wanted here, which is kind of a typical Cowboy thing, especially with, with the ownership. They kind of like their guys. They have their guys that they like, and they're going to keep them on the coaching staff, whether you like it or not. But they allowed him to come in and kind of hire his own people. And, I'm not mad at the coaching staff. I'm not mad at the way it's gone so far. I think that this offseason has seemed more productive, particularly more productive than any Mike McCarthy offseason. But we'll have to see. I don't know if history shows me that the Cowboys aren't going to do shit in free agency. That's what it shows me. But a lot of these interviews and these little speeches that Stephen and Jerry both have given, it sounds different. And maybe they learned. Maybe. But, time will tell, and the time that will tell is a short amount of time because this is going to happen pretty quick. So, with the Cowboys offensive line, you have a group of guys, particularly with the loss of Zach Martin, and he retired. And, we talked about him a lot on the last show, more damn Pro Bowls than he had holding penalties in his career. The dude was phenomenal. And, I wish the Cowboys could have had more success on the field while he was a Cowboy. He'll probably be a first ballot Hall of Famer. The dude was the best guard in football for a long, long time. And they're going to miss him. But as the season progressed last year, you began to see that he had some issues that he was dealing with that were beyond football. He had some injuries. He had some things that hindered his performance dramatically, and he ended up being lost for the season. And the young guys stepped in, particularly Brock Hoffman and T.J. Bass, and they did a phenomenal job, And you saw things with the offensive line that weren't, for lack of better words, regular with the old offensive line. You saw pulling guards. You saw things happening with the running game, and you saw Rico Dowdle start to get more and more momentum as the season ended. And it was kind of refreshing to see, like, damn, where has this been all season? And if you sat back and just really looked at it, it was the offensive line play, and particularly with your right side of the offensive line. And a lot of people question this offensive line that's coming up this season. Tyler Guyton, he had a PFF grade of 49.4, 18 penalties, and he allowed 6 sacks. And he's kind of your weak link right now, and we'll talk about him in a second. Terrence Steele had a 67 PFF grade, 7 penalties, 9 sacks. Cooper Beebe came in as a rookie, was a guard in college, literally was snapping to his mom in the backyard, learning how to play center. Came out as a starting center, had a 65.4 PFF grade, 3 penalties, and only allowed 3 sacks. Tyler Guyton is your number one guy now, and he's a phenomenal number one guy to have. If you're going to pass the torch to anybody, Tyler Guyton is a phenomenal guy to pass the torch to. 75 PFF grade, 2 penalties, 2 sacks allowed, was phenomenal all last season, even though the offensive line wasn't playing well. He had his moments, though. You could tell that, they were trying to kind of they never really got a true feel for it. But as soon as they started to get the feel for it, particularly in later in the season, man, you can see that this offensive line can kind of do some things. Brock Hoffman came in. A lot of people thought he may be the center at the beginning of the season, and he wasn't. Cooper Beebe ended up winning the job. But Brock Hoffman came in and gave you a tenacity that you didn't have on your offensive line. He's mean. He comes in and he means business, and he's pulling, he's flatlining people. He's doing all the things with the nastiness that you want an offensive lineman to do. And he's a free agent this year. He's a restricted free agent, but I almost can guarantee that this is one guy that they're going to bring back. He had a 66.3 PFF grade, 5 penalties, and he allowed 1 sack. These are the things that you have to consider with this offensive line. Tyler Guyton is the one guy that you have the most questions about. Now, everybody's saying that Tyler Guyton is doing all the right things now. He's in Frisco. He's doing everything with the new coaching staff. He's working with the new offensive line coach. He's doing all the right things. But is he good enough to play left tackle for this football team? 105.3 The Fan had a very, very, very interesting take on this whole thing. And I kind of agree with him. Check him out.
Yeah, and just to add to it, you had quotes from Stephen Jones talking about Terrence Steele, and he says that he thinks he's going to play much better in this system with Clayton Adams, and he says that
polls.
Yeah, he says Clayton has watched all the tape on Terrence and just really loves him. Terrence's strong point is his run blocking.
Yeah.
He says if we do what I think Shoddy and Clayton are going to do offensively, which is an even bigger focus on the run, that's going to help Steele. Clayton is very fired up, and so is Connor Riley. about what Terrence can do, and then they followed up like definitely at right tackle for Terrence Steele, and he said yes at right tackle. So any idea of maybe post June 1 cutting Terrence Steele to save a little bit of money against the cap, that is certainly not on the table. But all of these coaches coming in here, and again, these are coaches that have worked with just average offensive linemen in Arizona with the Cardinals and at K-State and get the most out of them. So hopefully they can get Terrence Steele back to the top tier version of himself.
Well, some of the best run plays they've had over the last couple of years have involved Terrence Steele, so it makes sense. You've invested so much in it, and it would cost you against the cap to move on from him. So, for me, the thing that makes the most sense is kind of building off what Howie Roseman said, where we can never have enough offensive or defensive linemen. I think you apply that to tackle. And you get a veteran tackle or you draft another one. You have Guyton, put him back on his timeline as far as his development. He's not ready, right? So treat him like a third or fourth rounder and say, hey, we need somebody else here. And then have him working to play right tackle once Steele's contract does mature here coming up in a year or two, that it wouldn't be so costly to let him go. I think that's how you make the most of it right now. But I can't get past the idea of having a veteran Dak Prescott on that contract and basically punting at left tackle that has turned him into a high interception quarterback. Whenever you didn't have Tyron Smith, he led the league in picks last year with Guyton in however many games he played, 11 touchdowns, 8 picks. To me, that's the kind of ratio that you're signing up for, and maybe the run game can protect you from it. There will be less pass attempts. But when you need to pass right now, you're not going to be able to do it well against good defenses. And your mistake at left tackle is a big reason why. So do you continue to let it be a problem for you? You have to ask yourself, what would Howie Roseman do right now? He'd bring out that credit card and go get himself a left tackle. Or he'd know at 12 he was going to take one that would be a plug-and-play type of dude. That's what you're competing against, right? And I think you guys can definitely see the wisdom of that, but we know that's not something the Joneses will do, right? And that is a massive flaw here, is just accepting, well, we spent a first rounder on him. We can't just bench him. Why the hell not? If you want to win big, you better.
Well, they really should have played him at the end of last season. And that's the most important thing for Guyton. He hasn't.
I agree. And anybody that has paid any attention to me and listened to me rant about Terrence Steele, I was not a big fan of Terrence Steele last year at all, but I noticed that when Zach Martin went out and Brock Hoffman went in, Terrence Steele's game it got better. And maybe he was trying to compensate for what I'm pretty sure that he knew if Zach Martin was dealing with any kind of ailments, he knew about it. I'm talking about Terrence Steele, and Terrence Steele, was trying to, possibly help out Zach Martin. I don't know the ins and outs. I'm just giving you my opinion. Maybe he was trying to help him, and it caused him to miss some blocks. I was a big fan of moving Tyler Guyton over to right tackle and maybe possibly getting rid of Terrence Steele. If it's going to be a big salary cap hit, I'm a fan of keeping him. But I'm also a fan of maybe adjusting his salary because he makes a lot of money, and the season that he had last year, particularly in the first half of the season, doesn't warrant it. It doesn't warrant his contract. So what can you do in order to save Tyler Guyton in his career? Is bringing in a free agent left tackle, is that something that the Cowboys maybe should consider, or maybe consider taking a tackle early in the draft, or maybe, and when I say early, maybe the first 2 or 3 rounds? Is that something that they may consider and give him the opportunity to learn from Terrence Steele and to kind of take over that position once Terrence Steele's contract is over in 2 years? Well, you got to kind of take it at the needs of the team, and you also have to realize that in the last 3 or 4 years, you've put a lot of draft capital in drafting linemen, particularly offensive linemen. You took Cooper Beebe high, you took Tyler Smith high, you took Tyler Guyton high. Is that something that you're prepared to do again? Well, needs of the team. This was before Zach Martin retired. All of your offensive line needs are right there at your medium needs, and you're talking about in the first, third, fourth round pick. You don't have a fourth round pick, so a third, fifth round pick possibly. They got corner down there fifth round, but it's not a need that where he's gonna come in and be an instant starter. With the loss of Zach Martin, I think that Brock Hoffman can fill that void. I'm not saying that Brock Hoffman's going to come out and just be Zach Martin, but he's not terrible. And then you have to go and look at the list of free agents. Now, Zach Martin is on the top of that list, and Zach Martin has retired, so that list obviously has changed. But, people on this list, you have to look at the top guys on this list, and you also have to look at their ages. And another guy that has been, been brought up multiple times is Will Hernandez because of his ties with Clayton Adams in Arizona. But Will Hernandez is coming off a major knee injury, and I don't know if you really want to subject yourself to that, coming in trying to get a fresh start, but the dude is coming off a torn ACL. I'm not real sure that you want to do that. So then you go down and look at the draft, and this draft is really, really strong, particularly at tackle. And right now, left tackle is one of your needs if you're going to do that, and you're going to sit Tyler Guyton down because you just feel like he's not ready. And there's some good tackles in this draft. There's some excellent tackles in this draft. Kelvin Banks is a stud. Will Campbell is an absolute stud. Josh Simmons is a stud. And then once you start getting down the list past those three, these other guys are still, you got some really good tackles on this list. And then you go and look at the guards, and there's some pretty decent guards too. There'll definitely be a guard available for you in the second round, where maybe you can move Tyler Smith out to left tackle and kind of fill that void that way and bring in a rookie to play guard and then still sit Tyler Guyton down and go about it. But one thing that they said about the Joneses, particularly the Joneses in the last few years, right? And when I say few years, I mean the last 10, 12 years, is if I got a number one draft pick, he's going to play. He's going to play. So Tyler Guyton was your number one draft pick last year. He was your first round draft pick, and he's a guy that they plugged in as a rookie, and they wanted him to play. And you have to consider what happened to him last year and the teams that they played, particularly at the beginning of the season. They played some really, really tough defensive ends at the beginning of the season that kind of gave him the blues. Particularly in week one, you played Myles Garrett, a guy that the Cowboys are talking about that's a possibility of as a player that they would want to trade for. And then the next week you had Cam Jordan in New Orleans. And then you went down the list. I mean, you had the whole Baltimore defense. They rotate defensive ends out. They keep people fresh. You face some really good defensive ends. You faced the tough T.J. Watt that kind of gave him the blues too. He faced the Kayvon Thibodeau that gave him the blues as well. What I think happened with Tyler Guyton is I think his confidence was shot. That's what I think happened. And then by the end of the season, by the halfway point of the season, I think that, his confidence was gone. A lot of that is mental. A lot of that is something that you as a football player are going to have to get over. That's what you're going to have to get over. And a new offensive line, a change at offensive line, a change in schemes is something that can deter that. But I really think that these guys that they brought in, particularly the offensive line coach, right? I think that he does a tremendous job of working with guys that may not be that great and making them better. And I think that that's what will happen with Tyler Guyton. I have a lot of respect for Connor Riley because of the things that he did at Kansas State. In Kansas State, they particularly running the football. I think Tyler Guyton's going to have to work on his strength, for one, because he's not a very big dude. He's not. He's 6'8", but he's 315 pounds, but he's 6'8". So that's a long and lanky guy. And he's going to have to work on some strength things. He's not he's not Tyron Smith by any stretch of the imagination. Tyron Smith came in here and just bulldozed people as a rookie. That's not Tyler Guyton. Tyler Guyton is a natural right tackle that moved to left tackle to play left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys as their number 1 overall pick last year, and he didn't have a great season doing it. But this is an opportunity for him to have a fresh start. And this is probably the key player on this entire offensive line that's going to make this thing go. Because what they said on the interview before as well, every year that the left tackle is weak, Dak throws a lot of picks. It's just what it is. He's not comfortable with the left side of the offensive line. He's trying to rush the ball out, and he's throwing a lot of picks. Ad-libbing because he doesn't trust that he's got blocking behind him, protecting his blind side, right? And, he tends to throw a lot of picks when his left tackle is weak. It is what it is. So you're going to have to address that position. Chuma Edoga is a free agent. And that's maybe somebody that you want to bring back because when he stepped in for Tyler Guyton, he didn't play bad. He played better than him. This is a really, really tricky situation that the Cowboys have brought themselves into because there are some skill players that are going to be available at 12 that could help this football team right away if the offensive line is squared away. If the offensive line is not squared away and they're not comfortable with it, don't be surprised if they pull the offensive lineman in the first round. Don't be surprised at it. And it's not an attractive pick. It's not a sexy pick. But what it does is it keeps your quarterback safe. It allows you to be able to run the football consistently like these guys want to do. The Dallas Cowboys this year, if you look at the history of all the coaches that they brought in, particularly their offensive line coach, their offensive coordinator, and their head coach, the Cowboys are going to run the damn ball. And Matt Eberflus said he wants to make the defense violent. That's what he wants to do. So their philosophy this season, upcoming season, are going to be bring players in where they can run the damn ball and play good defense. That's what the Cowboys are going to try to do. And the one thing that the front office they have to give them the tools to do that. You got to open up some money. You have to. You got to restructure Dak, of course. I think that dude's on the book for like 80-something million this year. You got to restructure that shit. You got to drop it down 30, 40 million. You have to, just to open up some space. Zach Martin gave you 20 million, right? That's 60 million on the books right there. And that's just with 2 players, a restructure and a retirement. There are so many ways that the Cowboys can open up salary cap space. I'm tired of hearing on all these shows and all these people running around talking about, well, Dak is eating up all the salary cap space and CD was greedy. He eating up all the salary cap space. And it's bullshit. There's plenty of salary cap space to go around if the front office does this thing the way that they're supposed to do it. It's simple. Dak restructures every year. Micah Parsons has already told you, I will take less if you're going to bring in some players. If you're going to be aggressive this free agency period, I'll take less money. I'll take it. Because ultimately, all they want to do is win. Hell, all us fans want to do is see them win. That's it. Cheer for this team every single year just to be disappointed at the end. And you're watching all these teams go to the Super Bowl over and over and over again or go further in the playoffs over and over again. I don't give a damn about no NFC championship game. I don't care about that shit. I don't care. I want to go to the Super Bowl. We're not giving out second place trophies. We're not. Oh, you were 1 game short of the Super Bowl this year. Don't care about that. I want to go to the Super Bowl. I want to win. You know what I mean? And a lot of these teams have put together, their front office has put together quality football teams, Philadelphia Eagles, Washington Commanders, football team, Redskins, whatever the hell you want to call them. They've put together quality football teams in a short span of time, Houston Texans, and they've gone further in the playoffs than the Cowboys have gone in 30 years. So it can be done. You just have to do it. You got to fix these uglies. You got to fix it. I don't think that this offensive line that the Cowboys have right now at the current state is a bad offensive line. I think Tyler Guyton is going to need some work. If not, you're going to have to replace him. And I'm not saying he's just a lost cause and, he's just going to be a bust. But if you keep destroying his confidence, if you keep throwing him out there and you're not giving him the tools to be successful, even if the tool is letting him sit down and watch for a while, learn for a while, be mentored for a while, even if you bring Zach Martin back, or even if you bring Tyron Smith back, who's a free agent on that list for a year just so he can retire a Cowboy and let him work with Tyler Guyton and just get him right. You understand what I'm saying? These are the type of things that you have to invest in your football team in order to make it successful in the long run. You have to do these things. You have to. Or it's just going to be a wasted pick. He's an athletic dude. He looked clumsy at times last year, but overall, he's an athletic dude. He's long. If he extends his arms, it's probably going to be a holding penalty. So he's going to have to learn how to play tight and extend his arms. And once he extends his arms, man, he damn near put you back there where the linebackers are. He's so damn tall. But there's going to have to be some fundamental things that he's going to have to work on. But that was one of the things they said out of the draft last year. He's raw. You know what I'm saying? He's just raw. And then you switched in positions. You got him playing backwards from what he's ever played in his life. But that you got to fix that left tackle position. I'm not that much concerned. I'm not as concerned about the right guard position because I think Brock Hoffman comes in and does a good job at it as I am with the left tackle. Because the free agency list ain't that great. The left tackles coming out of college this year, you got some badass dudes. You know what I'm saying? And it might be something that, people, Cowboy fans that are, this Ashton Genty, Tatora McMillan, Luther Burton III, all these high-flying dudes that you got in the first round, if they feel like the Tyler Guyton is not going to do the job that he needs to do, then they're going to draft one of these tackles. At least they should. Because you got to keep your quarterback safe. You got to be able to run the football with whoever's going to go back there because there's some pretty good running backs that you can take in the second and maybe the third round. But you had good running backs you could have taken in the third and fourth round last year, but you gave your fourth round pick up. Speaking of that, Cowboys are talking about taking a quarterback in the draft later on in the draft because they're not even real sure who they're going to bring back next year. I wouldn't be surprised if they don't bring either quarterback left and start grooming somebody to take over for that. It is what it is. It's an interesting situation that the Cowboys have gotten themselves into because there's so many positions where they need so many things because the front office has handled this team. It hasn't been good. But you can fix it. You can. The easiest way to fix it is with money. And we all know Jerry got money. He's got that. So you open up money on this salary cap, right? You start giving out some signing bonuses where you can kind of, shrink these salaries down, but just give them signing bonuses and get some quality football players in here where you can win some football games. Showed you a couple of days ago on the defensive line, you got some quality free agents that are sitting there, defensive linemen, particularly in the trenches, the tackles. You can fix that. You can fix this offensive line, but you kind of hanging in the balance with Tyler Guyton. If you're going to play him, he's got to build some confidence, and a lot of that is mental, but this coaching staff is going to have to work with him tremendously to get him right to where he needs to be. The list of free agent tackles just isn't that great. Not this year. There's some quality guys on there, but it's not. Your best bet would probably be in the draft. 9 times out of 10, they're not going to take a tackle in the draft. They're not going to do that. They're going to take one of these high-flying players. But if you're not blocking for your quarterback or you're not opening holes up for these running backs, what good is it going to do you? It's got to get ugly up front. One thing that these teams do, particularly the Eagles, as much as I hate to say it, they win the games in the trenches. Their quarterback play wasn't spectacular this year, but their running back had some big-ass holes to run through. And even if he didn't, he was hurdling people backwards and shit. You know what I'm saying? We got Deuce Vaughn and Rico Dowdle. Could have had one of these players, could have had one of these free agent running backs last year. It's why it kind of tickled me when I was listening to Steven talk earlier, talking about how they evaluate players and they try to attack free agency, and when they don't, they try to fill it in the draft. And that's just not true. They particularly didn't do it last year when you had golden opportunities to do it. But I'm excited about it. I am. I'm excited about the season. I truly and honestly think that there's some things that are going to shake this off season. I do. And I think they're going to bring some quality players in here in free agency, even though it may only be 1 or 2. And you're going to have some room where you're going to have plenty of room to sign Michael Parsons, get him signed, get him in here, and not make the mistake that you made last year with 2 contracts just hanging in the balance and you wait till the very last minute to sign him. I think they're gonna stop that. You know, I'm hopeful that things will change, and I think with the way this coaching staff is built, I may not be a big fan of the head coach, right? But I'm a big fan of what the head coach did with this coaching staff. I don't think this coaching staff is that bad, and I think it's a good start. The things that are going to have to happen after that, though, are going to be the real testament of how good the Cowboys are going to be this year. You got to attack free agency, selective, aggressive, whatever the hell you want to call it. You got to make some decisions about this offensive line, get it right. Maybe you bring in a veteran left tackle and you let him and Tyler Guyton battle it out in training camp and may the best man win. Open up a competition. Maybe that'll light a fire under his ass. And then the most important thing is you're going to have to let football people do football things. You're going to have to stay the hell out the way. And that is the ultimate test with the Dallas Cowboys. Is the front office is going to have to stay the hell out the way and just let football players and football coaches and football people do football things. Hell, we don't know if Will McClay is a good, general manager or whatever the hell I don't even know what the hell his title is, to be honest with you. Play a president of football, I don't know what the hell you call him. But maybe he does know, but it's just he got Jerry by his side all the time. And they come down there and they just get in the damn way, land a helicopter in the middle of practice and shit. That's what they do. But this offensive line is important. It's just as important, if not more important, than the defensive line. I feel like it's more important. But that defensive line, if the offensive line is 1A, then the defensive line is 1B. You have to get better in the trenches. You got to make this ugly. You have to this season, because the Eagles just wrote you a blueprint on how to do it. You make it ugly in the trenches and you can win. Guarantee it. Take you all the way to the Super Bowl. Make Patrick Mahomes look silly rushing 4 people. You blitz one time in the game, you got Patrick Mahomes looking crazy as hell. You can do it. And they have the same, if not more, salary cap woes than we have. They got a quarterback and 2 wide receivers and a running back that's about to get paid. You're going to have to pay these defensive linemen too, because they moving shit. You're going to have to pay them. It's an interesting situation that they got themselves into. I'm just hoping that they do the right things. All right. That's my show tonight. Saturday, we're going to talk about an interesting topic again with the Cowboys. It's going to be linebacker. And depending on whether you look at Micah Parsons being a linebacker or not, and especially with the injury to Overshown and it being as severe as it is, and you don't know when he's coming back, you kind of got a weakness there too. And you got to fix it. You got to. And there's some opportunities in free agency that you can fix it, particularly in free agency. There's some really good linebackers, some good young linebackers in free agency that can come in and they can put a statement on this defense. And Eberflus is one of those guys. He likes to play. He loves his linebackers. Linebackers always excel in his defense. They do, because he likes to open them up and let them roam around and do things. This is a golden opportunity for him to do that. But you got some good linebackers in the draft that you might want to take a look at too. We'll talk about that Saturday. All right, y'all. Cowboy C3, you guys have a great rest of your week, and I will see y'all on Saturday. All right, y'all. Peace out. Dallas Cowboys for life.